What is up, everyone, and welcome to Drop In, where we have open, authentic conversations about all things mental health, including how to authentically be yourself. What up, Dr. Jackie?
Hello.
Are you authentically yourself now? And if so, at what age do you think that came to be?
Wow. Diving right in.
I don't F around.
No pause.
Answer the question.
Yeah, I would say I'm my authentic self now. I'm trying to think of like what age I don't know that there's an age that I've ever like hit this like self-actualized point of
No.
authenticity. I feel like I have showed up throughout my life authentically in different ways and less so in certain environments or around certain people. But I feel like this is probably the most authentic I have been thus far, is what I would say.
So more like a barometer, like a video game thing of like energy,
Yeah.
authenticity rising, and then in another chapter, like boo, low on
Yeah.
authenticity. You
Yeah.
need like an item to like recharge it back up.
Yeah. What would you say? Is there an age or like a time that you felt most authentic?
And we're gonna get into this. I feel like I'm always changing.
Yeah.
But when I think about authenticity, I think about me feeling confident to express, articulate myself
Mm-hmm.
in whatever version of myself is existing in that chapter. I think it was in my 30s.
Mm.
Definitely in after school, getting my degree
Mm-hmm.
in my 30s. I don't have like an exact moment, but I know how my 30s have felt compared to my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels calmer. It feels more grounded. And within that, I feel like it's easier for
Mm-hmm.
me to be whatever authentic version I am in this chapter.
What about 40, babe?
What the hell? I literally just forgot that I'm 40.
You said that. I was like, should I be concerned that like you're not authentic now that you're 40?
What just happened? I forgot. Thanks for the reminder. I am 40. I don't, it's too early to assess. We're like, what, 5, 6 months in at this point?
Yeah.
It's too early to assess 40s. Give me more time to sink in, and then I'll report back how the 40s are.
Is that how you would define authenticity?
Yeah, it's interesting because this comes up a lot in therapy,
Mm-hmm.
meaning people come to us and they're like, I don't feel like myself,
Mm-hmm.
which is always an interesting thing to put out in the room, or people will put on the form they fill out when they want to join our private practice of, not feeling like myself lately.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that indicates you know things about yourself that either resonate or you like or work for you that have become lost.
Mm-hmm.
But I think defining authenticity is really hard.
Agreed.
What comes to mind for you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is being able to live according to your values and feeling confident implementing that in different settings.
You said that with a question mark. This is just you thinking on the fly.
Yes. Welcome to the inside of my brain.
Because I agree with the words that came out of your mouth, but you said it almost as if like question. But I like what you're saying of like knowing your values,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of probably we should pull all the way back and say, what are the things that influence a person? First thing that comes to mind, maybe besides values, is the culture
Mm-hmm.
you grow up in.
Yeah.
When you think of like the cultural, societal influence on Jackie,
Mm-hmm.
what comes to mind?
Yeah, I don't think you can tease those things apart, if I'm being real. Like, I think we are a product of our environment, whether we like it or not. So I don't know that you can ever completely separate the two of those things.
No, and yeah, my question was kind of vague, but I'm like, you would think of yourself as a New Yorker. You would think of yourself being from Long Island.
Yeah.
You think of yourself, and I don't want to answer these things for you, but
You know what's interesting? Like when I think about a lot of those factors, the word that comes to mind also is identity. And I think we all have different aspects of our identity and like what makes us who we are, whether that be being a New Yorker, being from Long Island, being sarcastic, being, upfront and direct and, having all of these character traits and identities of like, I now I'm a Floridian. I am a wife. I am a step parent. I am a daughter, a sister, all these things that kind of come to mind as identities and aspects of who I am. And so, yeah, that the identity versus authenticity, I feel like those two overlap a lot.
definitely, yeah, I'm thinking of myself like cis, white, straight
Hmm.
man from the
Hmm.
Midwest,
Right.
like all these different identity factors that do inform
Mhm.
who I am.
Right.
And how society plays a role in communicating something to you. What does it mean,
Hmm.
to be a white cis man
Hmm.
in America? A lot of unearned privilege is
Yeah.
what that means in America.
Hmm.
But these identity parts tied with what the society say about these things, it starts to form something, of course, internally.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And even talking about the cultural aspect, it makes me also think about the people who don't feel like they are able to authentically be themselves because of cultural or societal influences. And I think it can be really hard to show up authentically and as your fullest, realest self in certain settings, in certain situations, in certain places when you feel like you don't necessarily fit the societal mold or this ideal person in society based on our culture.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind with that is like safety and environments.
Yep.
Are you in an environment where it feels like, based on the identity factors we're laying out there,
Hmm.
that you can show up, you can, claim space in the room or be heard or any of those things?
Right. And I think safety is one of those key things that I talk to clients about all the time, especially when it comes to this ability to be authentic and having the safety in the space to show up authentically as yourself. Because if we eliminate culture and we eliminate the societal influences in settings, we can't do that.
No, no. There's always going to be an influence. And again, you take the context of wherever you are,
Hmm.
right? Like, you can think of yourself within the work context.
Hmm.
That is its own culture and an environment.
Totally.
You think of yourself within your family,
Hmm.
culture and context. That might feel very different than work. You
Yeah.
think of yourself in your friend group, your neighborhood. I mean, we could go on, but these different contexts inform something different and pull something different out of you.
Right. And how you can show up in those various settings or with different people.
Right. Which is why, part of me self-reflecting and being like, it wasn't until after school.
Hmm.
School is really stressful.
Yes.
I'm not comparing it to other stresses or oppression or any shit like that. I'm just
Sure.
sharing my own,
Yeah.
journey. But in school, there's a lot of performative nature. You're under a lot of supervision. You
Hmm.
got a lot of eyes on you. You're literally recording yourself doing something you've never done before
Right.
and having your professor, your supervisor, all your classmates basically critique the shit out of you.
Mhm.
Why do you sit in your chair like that? I don't freaking know. I didn't even know I was sitting. I was floating on anxiety that whole session. But
That's funny.
you think about that, and I'm like, the training is great.
Sure.
And some of that doesn't really sink in until after. But in the midst of, you're trying so many things out
Mhm.
and trying to become yourself in the room as a therapist, that it's hard to feel like, who am I? And
Yeah.
know that and like be authentic when you're like, I'm testing out a lot of new things.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times there is this performative nature, like you said, but there's also the exploration, especially in those like earlier environments, whether that's in school, whether that is, like we're talking about in grad school. You're really exploring different identities and different versions of yourself to see what fits, because a lot of times that is how we figure out who we are and what our values are, is testing the waters and seeing, does this feel aligned with me, and does this feel good to me, does this feel comfortable, does this feel okay, or is this something that feels really odd to me, or there's something off about this situation or the way that I engaged with this.
Right. And it based on what you're saying, there's part of me that wonders, this balance between authenticity and masking.
Mm-hmm.
Why we mask, why we're authentic, and sort of the interplay between that. Because I'm not saying within like, someone can be different
Mm-hmm.
in a professional context. Like what I say all the time is, when I'm a therapist, I try to become an expert and sort of an artist in listening.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know me as a friend, I can take up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, I've become aware of and all these things like that. But I'm a high energy guy.
Yeah.
But when I'm in the therapy room, I'm not giving a damn TED talk. I'm
Right.
not trying to, make someone laugh. I'm not trying to be like engaging. I'm trying to learn about you
Mm-hmm.
and sit with you, in your symptoms, pain, understand your cultural perspective, understand your narrative. And it's a part of me. And at the same time, it's certainly not how I am when I'm with all my friends.
Right. Well, and I think different contexts and different aspects of our identity and setting pulls different aspects of our identity, of our values, of how we show up authentically. Like, I think you can look very different depending on the setting
Sure.
and still be showing up authentically in all of those settings.
I totally agree with that. And to me, I think there's something different when we talk about masking.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of masking, I think for safety purposes sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of a discomfort sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe leaning away from vulnerability, which we have to talk about vulnerability if we're going to talk about authenticity. But masking is sort of like a heaviness or a necessity that is, the net result is more draining.
Yes.
But it does have a purpose.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. It also makes me think about people who identify as people pleasers, right? Or engage in kind of people pleasing tendencies and patterns, which tends to go hand in hand with masking. They might not be exactly the same, but there's a huge overlap between those two things. And this is one of the top things that we talk about in therapy, is feeling like I have to please everyone around me and feeling like I have to live up to other people's expectations or societal expectations or my role expectations or pleasing my partner, family, etc., you name it. And when we're engaging in those types of things like people pleasing or masking, whether that's for safety or other reasons, there's not a lot of space to ask yourself, how do I want to show up? how can I speak openly and talk about my values or show up authentically in this space when that isn't exactly afforded to you or feel comfortable to you?
And there becomes this interesting conversation you have in therapy about that is there room within these different contexts, these different spaces for you to be seen, advocate for yourself, and be more authentic?
Mm-hmm.
It's an unknown. You know what I mean? In some situations, someone's going to mask at work because they feel like I have reason to not trust these people.
Mm-hmm.
I have reason to believe that, you know, if they knew I was neurodivergent, for example, it would be used against me. And I've seen it play
Mm-hmm.
out in my work setting.
Right.
There's also, and this is where the curiosity and the conversation comes in, is like, is there room within that? You said you have a work best friend. How do you let them in?
Mm-hmm.
Have you taken opportunities to be seen? And these are the things where it's like, we can be resistant to change because it's protective.
For sure.
And yet experimenting and kind of getting curious about like, what are the ways that I can be a little bit more authentic in these different contexts is, again, the conversations we have a lot in therapy.
Totally. It's interesting because it makes me think a lot about, yeah, people who have had to either people please or kind of fawn based on trauma and experiences where that was safety and how that's continued. Or people, like you were saying, whether it's neurodivergence or otherwise, that you're having to mask in order to not have consequences
Mm-hmm.
in different environments. And it's really hard to break out of that pattern. It's very hard to feel safe enough in different environments or with different people to actually show up as yourself and be vulnerable. And there is that, key word there. Be vulnerable enough to kind of put yourself out there in a real way, not knowing if there will be repercussions, not knowing if you will be judged, not knowing if someone will, kind of not accept you.
And I'm glad you're broaching into vulnerability. When you think of like, and kind of compare and contrast
Mm-hmm.
how vulnerability relates to authenticity, what do you think of? What comes to mind?
I think it can be very scary to show up as your full self and to make your opinions, your beliefs, your values known to other people, because you are then opening yourself up to their response or their reaction. And sometimes that can be very unpredictable and might not feel super safe, again, depending on experiences and depending on who it is or what setting or context you're in. So when I think of vulnerability, I think of, yeah, the fear of opening yourself up to rejection.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I think when vulnerability works, it's I share something core to me,
Mm-hmm.
authentic to me,
Mm-hmm.
and you see that, absorb that, and not use it against me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even great when you like appreciate that, you get curious about that, you like lean into it. It sort of deepens the relationship you have.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is so interesting because I think it is the gateway to connection. And I think it's also the gateway to disconnection a lot of times.
You find out.
Right.
Yeah, that is the that is the thing. And we're having this conversation is so nuanced.
Of course.
And we're trying to go through all these different contexts and this and that. Because I think, truthfully, if we're just going to be straight up, it can be easy as white people who come from a lot of unearned privilege, just be like, be authentic. And we know that's not reality.
Right.
Meaning, It depends.
Mhm.
You know, how could we say that to someone living in a system who's being oppressed and it's dangerous out there for them?
Mhm.
I would never say that.
Right.
Do I think this is an important conversation? Again, that comes up all the time in psychology and mental health. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And so we're breaking it down and dissecting it. But even vulnerability, it becomes so important to think about who actually knows you.
Mhm.
And that's something I ask clients a lot. Who do you think knows you? And I hold the belief that I don't think any human being out there knows 100% of us because we do not know 100% of us.
Right.
I think that's a fallacy. Like, I know I don't know 100% of me. There's
Mhm.
always things in the unconscious, whether you call them the shadow or whatever, or things I'm just discovering.
Right.
I think that's part of being human. But we know when you can sort of think about all the connections you have and say, who really knows you?
Mhm.
People either come to mind or they don't.
Right. Yeah. I guess when you think about that, are there people that you think about that you're like, I know I can show up 100% as myself and that person will accept me?
Absolutely. And the reason is I immediately think of examples in my mind where I was vulnerable and they held that space.
Mhm.
It wasn't used against me. It's not like they, said something profound that changed my life or anything like that. I'm thinking of some friends out there, but they saw and held what I was putting out there and accepted it.
Right. Which I think is, again, the most connecting that you can feel to someone when you are vulnerable and you are your realest, rawest, most imperfect human self. And someone sees that and is like, yeah, that's fine.
Right. And those are like, these conversations come up a ton in therapy. You're dating someone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I really want to talk to them about having OCD, but I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
What if they're like, I don't believe in all that. Like, that's not something you just can't get over.
Mm-hmm.
You just try not thinking about it. Some people out there getting triggered. I'm getting triggered by my own
Oh
words.
my God.
This is the thing we're afraid of. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're dating someone for a little bit, things are going real well, and you're like, I struggle with this internal part. That's a part of me of having OCD, and I just don't know. I'm worried if I share that, what's
Mm-hmm.
gonna come back at me.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think those are the conversations that we have so frequently in therapy is I want to show up as myself. I want to be real. I want to show these people who I truly am and connect with them. And I'm scared.
Right. Right. And that to me is the inevitability of risk. And again, there's always nuance, there's always context. But when you think about this and reflect on this, vulnerability always has risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're never going to be for sure or completely safe when you disclose something core to yourself.
Right.
And that for some of us, you just have such limited experience with that. That is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And for other people, even like as I self-reflect now, apparently I'm 40. News to me. I just found out at the start of this podcast. But reflecting now, I'm thinking through my 30s and even going through the education we've been privileged enough to get, I had a lot of experiences in there of being vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
and having people step up and see that and hold that and not reject.
Yeah. Which is huge because when you have those experiences and you test the waters and you show people who you are and you feel that acceptance from them, that starts to also compound and you're able to hold space for that aspect of, wow, I put myself out there. I was vulnerable. I showed people who I am. I showed up authentically, and they accepted me. And then you feel all of that happening as you continue to test the waters. You're able to, I think, over time, kind of continue practicing that almost as a skill, and then build those experiences into your kind of memory bank to hold space even for yourself showing up that way.
Totally. Yeah. And then you can sort of be like, I know what it feels like to be more authentic. And in this space, I'm not.
Right.
And then you really start feeling like when you're in those spaces, you're like, oh, this space sucks. This really, really stinks. Because it just feels so good when you know you don't have to be thinking 5 layers deep about what you express, what you say, and sort of showing who you are.
Right. It makes me think too, I have these conversations obviously a lot with clients, and they're like, I want to show up as myself. I want to, not care about what people are going to think of me. And I want to be able to just like give no F's and continue to like live my life and just be confident in that. And that's hard. Like, that's not something that, we throw a few little skills at and all of a sudden, poof, you feel confident to be fully authentic in every aspect of every situation. So I think maybe it could be helpful even to talk through what that process, even in therapy, can look like.
In terms of being more authentic?
Yeah, and learning to be more authentic with yourself and with others.
Yeah, I think this is the tuning in word. For that was the most like maybe yoga mindfulness word I could use. But you there has to be this point where you look inward and start to feel how something resonates with you. And for some people, there hasn't been this experimentation.
Right.
Of, is this something that gives me energy? Is this something I look forward to? Is this something that lifts me up? And the something, it could be anything from an activity to an environment to, the type of conversation you're having. But I really don't know how you do this without that reflective moving inward and noticing how something resonates with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's interesting because I think about certain clients, especially with religious trauma, who, as they're stepping away from a previous belief or belief system, a lot of their identity is tied up in that. And so there's this very intense process of figuring out who I am now without this kind of previous system that I was working with. And how do I discover who I am or what I believe in currently? And that's a process that, again, like you're saying, turning inward is a huge part of that healing journey of really asking yourself the questions of, how do I feel about this? What's my reaction to this? What does my body feel like when I'm in these situations, these settings around these type of people? And what does that mean to me? It's starting to ask yourself the questions first of, how do I feel about that? Does that fit for me? Does that align for me or not?
Yeah, and the signaling matters here, meaning where is that signal coming from? If you've been told your whole life, things about your identity, I mean, we know internalized homophobia, obviously real,
Right.
racism, I mean, all these things are real. So if you've been told these things, from any source, could be religion, society, or whatever, it's identifying where is this signal coming from? Because it starts to feel like it's inside the house. And then you can start to identify, you're like, that's, again, not to pick on or anything, but that's my dad's voice, who was so critical of me. And every time I did something, artistic, this is not true, RIP my dad, but every time I did something artistic, it was like, why are you wasting your time? what is it? This isn't going to make you any money. Why are you doing this? But this process starts unfolding where you're like, this is an external signal that has certainly disrupted how I feel. And yet how I feel about it from the internal is there's something that comes over me, you know, when I'm drawing, painted, doing these creative activities that really resonate. Like I look forward to it. I feel release. But yet I get that voice in my head from my dad, and I'll hear it and be like, this is such a waste of time.
Yeah, it's hard when there's conflicting reactions, especially somatically, right?
Right.
Because we tend to experience that immediate response from previous experiences or previous relationships or dynamics. And that's something to look at. That's always something to see. Like, again, is this my voice? Is this someone else's voice or influence that's making me feel this way? And do I feel connected with this thing or with these people that I'm with or with this activity, hobby, whatever you name it? And I think as you start to explore that for yourself and know what fits for you and what feels less like you can also start implementing those things or kind of testing the waters in micro moments with other people as well and in other environments and kind of testing and practicing, if you will, showing up more as yourself.
Absolutely. It's so true. Yeah, I think there's just no getting around experimentation. There just isn't.
And I think of therapy even as experimentation a lot of times, right?
Of course. I mean, I think it's to an interpersonal therapist, it's core.
Right.
This is the experiment.
Right.
We are experimenting. This is, I should be providing you something corrective and different than you've received previously.
Right. And a lot of times that's a safe space to actually explore those things and to test out and practice showing up authentically, right? Of being able to say, well, this is my opinion on this. And having your therapist say, okay, that's cool. I think that's great that you think that. Let's further explore.
That's the interesting thing about like what therapy really looks like versus what you might find in like a textbook or you know, some of these old therapy videos. It's like you can have a lot of conversations and be like, you spent 30 minutes talking about Pokemon cards. Why? The why is that person was told their entire life that their interests are juvenile. They're meaningless. They're stupid. And they have something that resonates with them, that built community for them, that built, you know, something they look forward to, an excitement in their life. And we're going to explore the shit out of that.
Yeah.
And really, you know, not just validate, but really dive into a deeper understanding of what this serves for your life. But I know damn well none of these textbooks behind me got anything about Pokemon cards or Pokemon card communities or anything like that.
It's so funny because even thinking about what we're taught in school and how we're supposed to show up as therapists versus us actually showing up authentically as therapists, I think can be two very different things.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, it's easy to knock any educational system, and we should to a degree. Like we should be critical.
Sure.
Like if there's anything we've learned through grad school and getting an advanced degree is like be skeptical. Right. Skepticism is fine.
Yeah.
Look deeper into it. Look at who the authors of this study are, et cetera, et cetera. And do I think it's damn near impossible to make a perfect educational system? Of course. So again, I think we're always improving and tweaking, you know, the educational system, especially in psychology, which is what we both come from. So I think, again, the further I get away from school, I give it more grace. But I also know now, if I started year one of my doc program, I know it looks different than when I started in 2011.
which is encouraging, obviously, as we want things to evolve. And I think the biggest difference, at least for me, is very much what we were talking about earlier of like you're showing up in these kind of ways that we're taught theoretically. And then we're also video recording our sessions and showing them to our entire like cohort and professors so that we could all critique them together, which is a whole other episode right there. Um, but the ways that we even probably feel more comfortable with ourselves in the room also speaks volumes to that authenticity and modeling that for our clients.
Right. And again, I think there's so much content out there. I don't know. I don't know how many blank slate therapists there still are. I'm sure there's some.
Sure.
Do I know where they are or who they are? I don't. And I think this is the biggest drawback to that is within blank slate, there is no modeling. Zero. None. I mean, that's kind of the point of it. The point of it is I give you nothing about my being to theoretically keep it all on you for you to do your exploration. There is a huge detriment to that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I know I've said this before on this podcast, but I think the more and more we get into AI, the further we get from blank slate. Because if you're a blank slate therapist, I don't know what you're providing that AI couldn't provide.
Yeah.
Meaning, I think the last frontier for us as therapists is to model what it means to be an actual human.
Mm-hmm.
And in that itself, it is corrective and it does lead to growth. And we know that.
Right. It's funny, like I even think about clients that have shared that with me of I appreciate that you show up as yourself and you're not, you know, this buttoned up person and that I can have real conversations with you because I feel safe. I feel like I can then show up in my closet on the floor with my hair in a ball and it's okay. Or I can show up, you know, on my bathroom floor or in my bed and I can just be myself.
And we should say, I agree with you. And we should say that, you know, people do have different preferences.
Totally.
And we know that can be cultural.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have this data off the top of my mind, but I remember reading one research study when I was in grad school that generally in some Asian cultures, they can prefer a more professional relationship and it to be, again, more solution, more professional, and maybe less relational and sort of interpersonal in what we're talking about.
Sure.
And again, I think this makes sense individually.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get differences. But I think it also comes back to, as us as therapists, is I can't be the best therapist for every single person.
Yep.
I can try my best. That's different.
Mm-hmm.
I can try my best for every person that shows up. And Lord knows I do. But it's a fallacy to think that I'm the best fit for every single person that comes my way. That's ludicrous.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think about when, I don't know if this was when we first started dating or maybe a little bit after. And like part of me still was like clinging onto this like professional like persona of still I'm like working in kind of like corporate-esque environments and I was still doing like the reality show like work that I was doing. And so I was in these very like multi-million dollar companies and productions and things like that that were more professional, quote unquote, or like buttoned up and you are the expert type of vibe. And you were like, but that's not you. Like every time I, you know, would try to like put on a jacket and pants and whatever, and you're like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? And it's so funny because now the more that I have become myself authentically and showed up as the person that I am, whether that be on social media, whether that be with my clients, or just how I carry myself and hold myself, even as a professional, but being myself in that context. Isn't it so interesting that all of the clients that I have are so aligned and just the right fit for exactly what kind of clinician that I am.
And that's the number one thing I say all the time when I give talks, on social media, at different training sites and whatever, is I said the number one benefit is since I've been posting on social media, I haven't gotten a client that is not a good fit.
Yeah.
And it's because they have all the data in the world on me.
Mm-hmm.
Does that come at a cost? Oh God, we know
For
the
sure.
things that come to posting on social media. I'm not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows because it is not.
Yeah.
But the benefit is I know when I pick up a new client, they know me.
Mm-hmm.
They might not know everything about me or whatever, but they have a lot of data on me. And I will say it's not that they know exactly how I'm going to be in the room,
Mm-hmm.
but I think compared to the little bit of data you get on a therapist off, Psych Today, Google, or a website, I had no idea. Like the 5 therapists I've had in my life, I had no clue how they were going to be
Right.
based off a photo and a little paragraph you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you post on social media like every day, people are going to know.
Right.
Again, on the benefit side of things, that I'm with you. And it's like, especially in the way that you're posting, if it represents, who you are, the more authentic you are, you're going to get better, match in that sense, which I think is good for everybody. I
Right.
want clients to know and be informed and have a good idea of, oh, I know how Justin's going to be in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Or I got a good idea of how he thinks about things or how he goes about helping people within this context.
Yeah, totally. It makes me think a lot about social media in general, right? And how we show up there. Because I think that is a space that for some people can feel more performative, more,
Mm, hmm.
I'm only putting out this version of myself. And for other people, it might feel the complete opposite of this is the only space that I get to be my fullest authentic self and actually express myself.
This is where I feel like the algorithm and the reinforcement can be really toxic in a direction sometimes, and in the other direction, as you said, sort of positive and connecting, meaning that we know sort of things that grab the amygdala and hit people's nervous system and get them in fight and flight. People are going to watch more.
Yeah.
It grabs you in that way. So we know sort of like negative hooks.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the content creation space, you know what a hook is. It's basically one of the early things you say that communicate to somebody what this video is about to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And we know in a negative, sort of threatening way, it grabs people's attention of like, this is the one thing you should never do for your anxiety that you're probably doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, tell me, Justin. And it's not to say I've never made those videos, but for me, when I look back at my life, I don't want to look back on the content I made and been like, I just hijacked people's nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
scared them a bit, and that's how I kept their attention. Or that I just floated around in drama, screamed at people on the internet nonstop, and that's what I'm known for. Is calling people out, making them feel bad, just conflict, conflict, conflict. And again, I'm not saying we don't need some of that.
Sure.
Nah, like again, the real privilege take to be like, no conflict ever. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying for me, over the course of almost 6 years of making content, what I've learned is that I'm not myself. And I don't feel good when all I'm doing is making other people feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not my job to make people feel good either.
Right.
But there's something that you just know in the back of your mind. You're like, this is about pissing people off and about getting under skin. And I know that gets you more views.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't resonate with me. And again, I'm not judging you. If that's what you make and that's what you want to do, hey, if it works for you, go for it. It doesn't work for me.
Sure. But I think you said something even really important within that of like, that doesn't resonate with me. And I think that in and of itself is pointing to your authenticity and your value set of like, that doesn't feel good for me.
And philosophically, it doesn't make sense. Meaning, yes, there's shit we have to call out. 100% yes. And when I think about the divisions in our society, especially American culture, in my mind, there's no fucking way we fix this shit by creating more disconnection, more insulting, more name calling, more you're an idiot, more you're a snowflake, more you're no way. That's just basic psychology. Piss people off more and expect things get fixed? No chance. And unfortunately, we're in times now where that's the norm, is sort of name calling and your POS. And again, that starts from the top. Our leaders model that. That's trash in my book. And again, we would never do that as therapists.
Right.
I'm on my TED Talk soapbox right now. We would never do this as mental health professionals. We would never talk about people that way, treat them that way. It's shitty modeling. And that's what we're dealing with right now. And it pisses me off. Now I'm pissed off.
Clearly. Tell me how you really feel. Be authentic.
Yeah. There you go. Episode done. But then I think about that. And for me, in my thought and belief and values, I'm like, connection is going to lead us forward together. Connection, understanding, hearing each other. So why would I not model that? And that's, again, this is like revelation in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not something I've always known about myself.
Right. But I think part of that comes from testing the waters and doing something different or exploring different settings and environments and contexts. Like, you weren't on social media really before that or putting yourself out there in those ways. So that has become kind of like your medium to explore more of those conversations and showing up as yourself in this way on this platform, right? And again, it goes back to, what are my values? How can I live according to them in the context that I'm in and show up as best as I can as that version of me? Obviously in a safe enough way, right? Never wanting anyone to put themselves in harm's way just to be authentic necessarily, unless that is the thing that feels right to you. But being able to be more of yourself and show up that way and test those waters and practice using that muscle is something that gets you to a place of even more authenticity.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. And there's just no getting around that journey. And at times it being painful.
Yeah.
And at times it being a mismatch. And again, the amount of times we tell clients is like, when you're authentic with that friend that you wanted to deepen the relationship with, and what you got back was painful, you found out. And it's painful to find out. But in this life, in the limited time we have, it is ultimately better to know, because then you're left with the question of, if I want a deeper relationship where I can be my authentic self, I'm getting information back that it might not be here.
Right.
And that's good to know.
It's good data for sure. And being able to do that and test the feedback of that is so important, to be able to hold that space. And that's not to say that people have to love or agree with everything that you say.
No.
Because in my most authentic relationships, I would say that I can be myself and that person can disagree with me and also let me know that they disagree, or that they can tell me how they're feeling about something. And we don't have to have the exact same beliefs in order for us to be very authentic with each other. Again, like my most authentic relationships are the people that call me out and I feel safe enough that I can show them who I am and they're able to give me very real feedback. They're not doing it in a way that's harmful or hurtful, but they're being very real with me back. And that's something that to me, I appreciate in my authentic relationships.
Which I think social media, the era we're in, again, especially in American culture right now, I think the unfortunate thing is we're getting too many experiences where if we disagree, see you never.
Mhm.
And I don't think that is humanity.
Right.
I think there isn't a friend I have or anybody I'm close to that I agree with everything of
Right.
them. But because of social media, you can get into some things with cancel culture and debate whether that exists or not for another episode. But because of a lot of heightened polarized things, it can be like, oh, if we don't agree on this one thing, forget it.
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing? Like, that's a part where it's like, again, if it's about human rights and
Mhm.
safety and care for others, listen, I get it. I
Yeah.
can get foundational values being like, if we disagree on this, it's going to be hard. But the nuance of things, I think there's just, when you have deep conversations with people, you realize there's a lot of things you disagree on.
Yeah.
And I think disagreement and I think conflict is normal and natural.
Mhm.
I wish we would come back to a point where we can accept that versus I think social media kind of throws gas on everything of like, oh, if we disagree on anything, you're a bad person or, you
Mhm.
know, I can't even follow you anymore.
Right.
And those kinds of things I think just get
Right.
heightened.
Yeah.
Where again, in real life, person to person, you can connect through conflict. You can connect through disagreement. And I think
Totally.
on social media, it's just far harder.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think about too is, and I've had this come up in client conversations, is, well, if I show up authentically, is that just giving me license to be a complete asshole to everyone and say whatever it is that's on my mind? And I'm like, no, of course not. And that doesn't give anyone else license to do that either and to say that it's just, them being authentic. Obviously, being authentic in different settings, in different relationships with different, contexts, all the things, yeah, you're going to show up authentically in different ways. But does that mean that you tell everyone every inside thought you've ever had? No. Does that mean that you're being less authentic? Also, no. There is a way that you can navigate those conversations or show up as yourself and be authentic without being a complete asshole.
Yeah. I think, being a wrecking ball isn't usually recommended.
Right.
It's social dynamic. And I think sadly, some people can use that. Like, I'm just being myself. I'm
Mhm.
just being authentic. And
Right.
what I'd say to that is like, well, here's some interpersonal feedback. The feedback I have for you is this is really disconnecting
Yeah.
because you're talking over me, you're interrupting, you're not hearing me, you're saying things that are, you know, igniting these fires just to ignite a fire.
Mhm.
And again, time and place for everything. It's not that I believe in some decorum of communication, but I also agree with you of like, there's some people that can use this wrecking ball approach, completely unfiltered approach, and just think like, oh, if anyone doesn't like me, that's their problem.
Mhm.
There's consequences to that.
Right.
There's a lot of nuance in human communication and connection. And again, I'm not sitting here saying like there's one way to do that. That'd be insanely white of me to say. There's not one way. And there's cultural differences and variables and whatever. But when you ask yourself, does this person hear me? Does this person absorb what I'm saying? Like you
Mhm.
get a sense of that. You think of an uncle, you think of an aunt, you think of your best friend, you think of your boss. You
Mhm.
start to get a sense of this person really absorbs me and gives space for me.
Mhm. Yeah, can I trust this person to hold space in the ways that I'm wanting to show up.
And as you said, and we've alluded to, sometimes you got to test the waters. You have to build that. Another thing that comes to mind, on this topic of authenticity is sort of the tension or balance between self-acceptance and self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
What comes to mind when you think of those? Do you think of them on opposite ends or these two different spectrums? Accepting who you are in this exact moment, Jackie, in 2025. We're recording this on August day,
Wow, we're doing great.
October 14th. Dang. I'm also 32 years old, by the way. But in this moment, accepting who you are versus this notion of self-improvement.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think those two things either are on opposite ends of the spectrum or are necessarily the same. I would say that you can accept yourself in this moment and be showing up as the version of you in this moment and still be open to evolving and gaining new experiences and gaining more awareness, more insight. And that's what a lot of therapy is doing, right? It's being able to accept who you are at this moment, feeling okay enough with that version of you, and also being open to changing and evolving and improving and living life and gaining new experiences.
I totally agree. And especially when I think for myself, gosh, that is really core to who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I very much agree with the Muhammad Ali quote that's like, it says, if a man at 50 thinks the same as he did at 25, he's wasted 25 years of his life.
Mm, I love that.
I remember presenting that quote in high school and being like, this is the quote that I'll like pin to my chest. But it still resonates. And I might have misquoted and butchered the years or whatever, but the sentiment is that of like, if you think the same, 25 years in the future, he felt like you haven't grown at all.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't experienced anything new. You haven't questioned yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree with that more. I hope, even by 45, I look back at myself at 40 and be like, oh yeah, I would think of things differently.
Right.
And I know some people like to be like, oh, I have no regrets. And I understand where that comes from,
Mm-hmm.
of a place of like, let's not shame ourselves.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, there are tons of shit I look back on in my 20s. I'm like, I would do that differently.
Yeah.
Tons of stuff.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I didn't know what I know now.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are certain values that have always stayed constant for me, and certain characteristics and aspects of myself that have always been a part of me. And I think probably will for the rest of my life, right? Because they're just very core to who I am. But even within those values or characteristics or versions of me, those things have also evolved with experience. So I can still evolve and I can still continue to grow as a person. And a lot of my core aspects of myself can still remain the same, just evolved.
That resonates with me so much, of like, you just keep evolving. And it makes me think, like, as we summarize, a lot of this conversation that we've had in this growth towards authenticity, are there practices that come to mind for you? Are there things that you think of like, this is how someone, knows and learns more about themselves?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, therapy is probably one of the
We're gonna
best ways.
preach it. I mean, listen.
I mean, I wholeheartedly believe in what we do for that reason.
We're not gonna hide from that. We probably on this podcast don't say it enough. We're like, of course, therapy. No, therapy.
Therapy.
If you're privileged enough to get it,
Right.
it is a privilege.
And there are are some other things that you can do even outside of therapy for sure. Part of that could be journaling and really trying to reconnect with yourself and figure out what are my values and what are things that feel core to me or feel important to me or important aspects of myself. Um, Also, mindfulness being another core thing that we can incorporate just to kind of assess where we're at and connect with ourselves.
I'm with you, and even the two that you just named. These are practices where you slow down and you notice.
Right.
And I know in some cultures, this is their prayer.
Mhm.
Love it. If in the midst of prayer, you slow down, you reflect, you notice. To me, again, this is what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Even if you live in a collectivist culture, I still think having moments to look inward, again, whether it's in prayer, solitude, mindfulness, journaling, of course, therapy we believe in, but these are places to practice. How are these aspects resonating with me?
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think then also giving yourself some micro moments of practicing this and being able to be intentional
Mm.
with how you're showing up to certain spaces and with certain people, and maybe starting small of even if you're not saying something directly to someone, giving yourself a pause and asking yourself, how do I actually feel about this? Or what's my opinion on that? Or is this something that I really want to do? Or whatever those questions are that allow you to then look inward and notice how you're feeling in any given moment and choosing to be intentional. And again, that can start off with just the internal check ins. And maybe you're then using micro moments of, I actually don't want this for dinner, honey. I want something else.
If you ever said honey to me, I'd be like,
Who
who,
are
who
you? Get
the
out of my house.
Who the hell is this? And what did you do with Jackie? Honey, you channeled somebody. You channeled someone else. Honey bunches of oats. Oh my god.
Clearly something I don't have a problem saying because that had to be channeled into someone else.
So I'm with you though. I think before action, there's reflection and
Mhm,
naming, how something's sitting with me, what really attaches to my value here.
mhm,
And then with action, I feel like it's accepting there's always unknown,
mhm.
some bit of fear, maybe some bit of anxiety, and that's okay. I still feel that way
For sure.
when I'm vulnerable with someone new, less so with someone I know.
Mhm.
And again, depending on what I'm being vulnerable about, there can still be fear and like an
Yeah.
unsettled feeling. But I will say it feels more practice for me.
Mhm.
Like I don't worry that if something goes bad, I'll have no idea what to do. I'll be like, okay, this informed me, something about my connection with this person or my connection with this environment or my connection, within
Mhm.
this system. And these are things to know because they help us steer in other directions, even if, the response we get back is definitely not what we want.
Yeah. And being okay with that, which is easier said than done,
Right.
obviously, but going into those experiences and those micro moments of practicing, showing up authentically and knowing that, yeah, if someone doesn't agree or accept that part of you or that opinion or that value, that's okay. That doesn't mean that there was something bad that happened. It just means that that person doesn't necessarily agree or isn't on board with that aspect. And that doesn't say anything about you as a person.
Right. Right. And that becomes a practice of how do I not internalize this?
Mhm.
And again, ultimately find spaces and places where I am seen and I am
Exactly.
heard and I know I'm valued, which is what all of us need.
Totally.
Hey, we're so excited you're here with us each week on Drop In. Hey, we love a review. We love some comments, some shares into the group chat. But we always appreciate you being here. We'll get to some listener questions next week. Always appreciate you asking and being thoughtful with those. But we'll see you next time right here on Drop In.
Bye.
Peace.